We took November off. Cosmo and I both started some businesses. I started a skateboard company called Secret Society Skateboards. Cosmo's restaurant is up and going. Pasta 78, if you're in Chandler, Arizona, make sure you stop by. Try out his restaurant. It's unbelievable. He may pop in tonight. He is out tonight. Friday night's very busy for them, so he's going to be filling in for some folks there. So we might see him pop in tonight. I want to welcome Jacob Twer. I'm going to do a quick bio for Jacob here. Our special guest is from Cy Harrison Lodge, number 70, in Payson, Arizona. Jacob is also a charter member of Arizona's newest observance-style lodge, Ascension number 89 in Phoenix. He has had his articles featured in both local and international Masonic publications, as well as having done several lectures around the Valley on esoteric topics. Jacob is involved in several ancillary bodies to include the Scottish and York Rites, the Masonic Rosicrucians, which are SRICF, and has co-charted a magical society in the East Valley. His interests are in the occult sciences, Hermeticism, Rosicrucianism, and the Western Esoteric Tradition in general. He hopes to perpetuate the burgeoning of a new breed of esoterically inclined Masons. And tonight we're going to get into corn, wine, and oil. So I want to welcome you, Jacob. And I love that last sentence because Freemasonry has really increased. I'm so happy the past 4 years, 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, and the knowledge and intellect you guys are bringing in with you is incredible. So I want to welcome you to the show. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, brother. Appreciate you having me on. It was fun co-hosting just a few shows back with you. I love your show, and I feel you've had some firepower on this show, so I feel like I've got some big shoes to fill. But we'll have fun, whatever. Like I was telling you, brother, I changed my mind last minute. I had an idea like almost all year when you asked me, and then I went ahead like 2 weeks ago and said, let's do something new. So
cool.
Yeah, whenever you're ready, should we jump right in?
Yeah, let's do it. So we're going to get into corn, wine, and oil.
Yeah, so brethren, and I think there's probably some non-Masons here too. I know even a couple of my friends were like, "Oh, you're doing a thing? Let me hop on there." So
cool.
Just for the brethren, obviously, anything we talk about, it's all about context. So obviously we're not, breaching any oaths we've taken or anything like that. We've got a cool topic, I think. And I have to credit brother Jamie Lamb for kind of inspiring this topic. So he wrote a book that came out this year called Approaching the Middle Chamber, and he's been on the show, and obviously he's a close friend of mine, and we I guess I can't talk about it yet, but there's some cool thing we're working on for the summer of next year that kind of involves this topic. So I was like, let's use this as like a springboard for that.
Oh, sweet.
And there's those some symbols in Freemasonry that just seem to get overlooked or passed through or not really talked about that much. And I think at least from my perspective, corn, wine, and oil just kind of breezed by a lot, and online you can find quite a bit of, pseudo spiritual kind of analyzing of corn, wine, and oil and whatnot. And it appears actually several times in the craft. So obviously within our fellow craft degree, but also during like cornerstone laying ceremonies, it's a part of that, and it's all over the Bible. So it's an interesting trio. And I'll also preface by saying, none of these ideas are necessarily brand new. I might just be packaging them in a new light. I think there's a kind of a dualistic nature to this trio of elements, or whatever we want to call them. So again, and I'm a student, so I'm not a teacher. I'm still a student. I will be my whole life. So I'm not claiming to be the end all be all. Basically, this will be everyone listening will be kind of listening to me work through these things as I'm working through them. I don't sit here and rehearse these a bunch of times, and obviously I just changed my mind about a week and a half ago anyway. So let me share a screen here.
Oh, looks
So
great.
I took that photo just a few weeks ago. I went up to do, well, probably a month ago, I went up to do inventory, and I was like, oh, that looks cool. Snapped a photo of a little corn, wine, and oil. So yeah, we'll jump right in. Corn, wine, and oil. I've got the wages of a fellow, the tria prima, creation, and reintegration. So like I was saying, as I was kind of studying this topic, it became apparent to me that there was kind of a dual, which was my original topic, was rectifying dualism in Freemasonry. And maybe it's just that's like been what's in my subconscious for so long, and I'm just pulling dualism out of every symbol that I come across now.
Okay.
But hey, that's what
that's what we do.
Symbolism, yeah, right. That's what symbolism is about, though, right? There's no when we define a symbol, it almost becomes a dead end. This is another thing I picked up from Jamie. When you give it a definition per se, you kind of kill it. So all this stuff is subjective, and again, this is just my kind of working through of these symbols, and hopefully we can talk after and have a cool discussion. But in the Bible, we've got corn, wine, and oil mentioned together at least 15 times, and
wow.
countless times, separately, as different, or separated out rather, within, framed in the context of like canonical literature. They're referred to as tithings, as salary and wages, nourishment and anointment. Obviously, you've got like people throughout the characters throughout the Bible, anointing the head with the oil and nourishing themselves with the corn and all that sort of stuff. I have a quote here that you can see. And the Lord answered, this is Joel chapter 2, verse 19. And the Lord answered his people, behold, I will send you corn, new wine, and oil, and by them you will be satisfied. And we'll kind of harken back to that, I guess, a little later, because it's relevant to some other stuff that I'll pull out of here. But within Freemasonry specifically, we talk about the corn of nourishment, the wine of refreshment, and the oil of joy, and also both within, again, the cornerstone laying ceremony, and which is a public ceremony, and within the fellowcraft degree, referenced as being allusions to peace, harmony, and strength, which for all of our Masons, those are familiar words. Down at the bottom, and this is what was interesting to me when I was doing some more research into this topic, is even within a lot of Christian writers have even acknowledged corn, wine, and oil as being spiritual in nature, and taken a little less literally than some of the other seemingly random stuff like these three things. Corn being likened to grain, right? The bread, the body of Christ; wine, that of the blood; oil, that of the Holy Spirit. So already, pre-Freemasonry, we've got this spiritual aspect of this trio of again, whatever we want to call them, elements or foods and beverages and tools in a way. So jumping forward again, so what's an esoteric topic without Kabbalah, or Western esoteric topic? So of course we're going to jump into that a little bit, because I'm personally of the mindset that Kabbalah pervades a lot of what we do as Freemasons and occult practitioners in general. Now, this glyph here, this called, for those who aren't familiar, if there are any, this is the Etz Chaim. This is the tree of life. This is kind of the central glyph of Hebrew mysticism that has been ripped and stolen by almost every occultist since. It's been a pretty good model for the downpouring of Christ consciousness and creation, and then our way back up towards him. So that's a
really great way to define that.
Yeah, I think, thank you, brother. I think it's something that you can study your entire life, and I find something new every time I think about it or meditate on it. It's just it's a filing cabinet full of every one of these little connecting lines and pathways, and Sephiroth are like their own individual filing cabinets, filled with correspondences and all sorts of stuff, and it's really cool. Now, obviously, we talk about pillars and all sorts of things in Freemasonry to do with masonry itself and erecting edifices and building temples, both physical and celestial per se. But jumping back to corn, wine, and oil. So etymologically, corn takes a few turns. If we look back into the kind of the history of the name, and again, this is in Jamie's book, so I encourage everyone to read it. He has this, I think Pierce Vaughn called it a college course on the fellowcraft degree, and I couldn't agree more. It's like a really, really great book for any fellowcraft or anyone in general that's interested in Freemasonry. It's an amazing book, but specifically, I reference his the part where he's talking about the wages of a fellowcraft, as we know as Masons being that of corn, wine, and oil. Now, corn, again, etymologically rather, takes a few turns, but one of those turns, in terms of one of its more ancient usages, would be that of being likened to just grain, and wheat and bread. So we like the last slide, can think of it like the body of Christ, right? The corn, the bread of nourishment, and we as Masons liken that to peace, which we could I guess argue about some of the correspondences. Again, this is kind of my interpretation of it, but I place that on the pillar of mercy, which is chesed there on what would be our right. If you're the Adam Codman there, his left hand resting upon that left Sephiroth of mercy there. So we call that the pillar of mercy, those three: Chokmah, Chesed, and Netzach. Next, we've got the oil of joy, likened to that of strength by the Masons, which strength we would apply to that of severity, or Geburah. So we've got Binah, Geburah, and Hod making up that pillar there of severity. And then wine, the wine of refreshment, likened to that of harmony by Masons, which we can think of as the pillar of beauty, which is our middle pillar, right? Right there in his solar plexus, we have beauty, Tifereth. So you've got Malkut at the bottom, foundation, which is Yesod, and then beauty, Tifereth, and then Doth, kind of, that's for another time. That's for another presenter. And then Kether there at the top. So that is our pillar of beauty or harmony, of balance, right? So already I saw our correspondences as Masons kind of as a direct link to the three pillars on this tree. And in this light, to me, they kind of represented together this downpouring of the source, that kind of the gifts. And if I can go back, well, I won't go back, but if you remember that quote, because I don't want to mess with the slide deck anymore, but that quote, it was, God gave us those gifts of corn, wine, and oil. They were for manifestation. They were like that downpouring of source, gifts from the divinity rather. So the tria prima I put of creation. Jumping forward, so the tree of life we can look at in a couple ways, and I said a little earlier, it's both kind of a map of creation itself, and also our pathway of return. So we can look at this tree in a few ways. So on the left, you see the lightning flash of creation. So this is a pretty general concept, thought up by esoterically inclined individuals over the past couple hundred years, and it's a good way to think about how and we don't have time, unfortunately, to go into each of the the meanings of the Sephiroth and the individual pathways and all that. But if we start at the top, you see that lightning flash working its way down and ending in Malkuth number 10 there at the bottom. That's how we Kabbalists would think about the manifesting power making its way down through the shells of manifestation. in a way. So again, we've got the spiritual tria prima, that is this gift, this downpouring of the source to manifestation. Now, the other way to look at the tree is from our perspective here and now, and this is kind of the great work, right? This is what we're doing here and now, and we call that the serpent's path of return. That's our way back up the tree. That's what we're doing when we're practicing the virtues and educating ourselves and serving humanity, right? We're working our way back up the tree. And then we call it the serpent's path because, unlike the lightning flash itself, the serpent's path is a little more intense, right? You see the serpent there touches all of those pathways and winds its way all through that tree, is where the lightning flash is a little more straightforward, straight through those Sephiroth. And in fact, a lot of magical societies and whatnot, and groups, Western kind of mystical groups who use that Kabbalistic scheme for their grades, include also the pathways, and we call that path working, right? So working your way back up the tree. So this is how I want to begin to look at that tria prima in a new light. So corn, wine, and oil, not as a gift, as God's source kind of manifesting down, but now as us working our way back up. And a good way to think of this, and I think probably the best way, is how the alchemists described it. So we of course, just like Freemasonry, alchemy is kind of two in one, right? Freemasonry is not only an operative craft, but it's also a philosophical and a contemplative science. And just like that, alchemy is not only an operative craft, but it is a spiritual science as well. There's a sympathetic resonance there. The idea that the practitioner or the mason or the alchemist, when carrying out physical processes, believes that there's also an internal, spiritual process happening at the same time. So alchemy shares that with Freemasonry in a cool kind of way. So jumping back into another kind of splinter of etymology here is going back to corn. Right around the time that Freemasonry's ritual was being codified all over, Europe, you've got the use of the word corn as a reference to salt. So if you think of corned beef, right, it doesn't literally mean corned beef. It means salted beef or brined beef. Corn was used, or a salt was used as a way to preserve meats and preserve foods, well before refrigerators existed and whatnot. So corn actually referred to the process of corning or saving, preserving things with salt, which has an etymological cousin that we use now today even as salary. Salary, that word meant to pay with salt back in the day. Soldiers and tradesmen were paid literally with salts. So really interesting etymology with this word, again in Jamie's book, so check that out if you can. So right away we've got corn right around the time of the framing of a lot of Freemasonic ritual being used, not literally to mean maize as we know, like corn today, but salt. So our first element here of the tria prima is salt. Wine would be next. I've got here frequently a mixture of grains, fruits, and vegetables, and these are referred to spirits. So spirits, you can go to the store and buy yourself some spirits. It's Friday night, I've got mine here. Wine is likened to that of being the spirits or the spirit, which is equal to Mercury in the alchemist tria prima. And again, this isn't my doing. The spirit has been likened to Mercury for hundreds and hundreds of years. Mercury is kind of that, psychologists refer to Mercury as being, like Jung talked about it being kind of the mental stuff. When we meditate, the goal is to kind of calm that mercurial element, right? That's hard to still. So that's our Mercury. Now, oil would be our last element in the Tria Prima here. And this is a substance that we know well. It's used to burn things, to sustain flame. So that's sulfur, or the soul. So taken all together, we've got corn, wine, and oil as meaning salt, sulfur, and mercury. Now, those also are likened to the body, corn being the body. So I'll jump forward here, and I've got it real clear cut. And I've got my sites at the end of this here. And there's a great site that anyone who's interested in this sort of thing, at least at a beginner's level, there's a really cool page that I found linked at the end here. And that's where I pulled this info from. We've got the symbols here on the left. So sulfur, again, related to the soul, to consciousness, to oil. Mercury next, mercury related to the spirit, to the mind, to liquor, spirits. And then salt to the body, structured thought, alkalines. And then just slightly different definitions here on the right. The fatty, oily, and medicinal identity of every substance in nature. That comes from Paracelsus, these definitions here, who was an alchemist and a physician. Probably one of the most famous, in fact. Mercury next being, again, the spirit, the fluid of life, of the life force that kind of pervades every substance in nature. And then salt, the body, the purified mineral corpus of every substance in nature. So this is kind of our Paracelsian alchemical Tria Prima. Jumping forward again, I say here at the top, the Tria Prima as elements of ascent. So I found this quote I thought was interesting. This is Paul Foster Case, who was a Freemason. He lived, let's see, I think it was right at the end of, right at the end of the 1800s to 20s or 30s. There's probably some brothers in here that know better than me, but he was a musician and an alchemist and a philosopher. Really incredible. He started his own magical societies. He has his own tarot deck. His quote here: "We may say that the basis of alchemy is the doctrine that man is the direct expression of the perfectly free, unmodified spiritual essence of all things." So to unpack that a little bit from my perspective, it's separating the wheat from the chaff, right? It's we as Masons would call it maybe, hewing off some rough and superfluous parts of ourself, maybe knocking off some useless aspects of the self. And that's what this Tria Prima is here, represents the self. And you can kind of see that in the glyph on the right-hand side. These three taken together represent the self as a whole. So these aren't necessarily tools in and of themselves, but they're representations of ourselves and the purpose. And this is what we talk about during Freemasonry a lot, and all magical societies talk about this, especially in alchemy. If you think of a spagyric process, we take a substance, right? Let's say some sort of root bark or something we want to do an alchemical process on, a spagyrical process on. Basically, we separate all the parts of that thing out, and then we recombine them. And I've got Baphomet here on the right hand side because it's written on his arms: solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate. So what that means is, in the context of literal alchemy, is separating out any given thing. If choose a leaf or a bark or some substance, and we're separating out the oil, the spirit, and the salts, and reintegrating them together in a purified form. And if that's not a perfect representation of what we kind of do in Freemasonry, right, then I don't know what is, because I think that these things are all related. The framers of our lectures and our rituals were probably all in tune to this stuff. Now, I put the fellowcraft up at the top here in the context of the craft. The fellowcraft, if you were gonna kind of look at it in a new way, the fellowcraft degree is this liminal degree. It's in the middle. Van Gennep's Rites of Passage is a great book. And he talks about how there's, in all sorts of initiations and all cultures, there is kind of this tripartite or three-staged initiation, either into manhood or into society, into a specific society. And it kind of goes like this. It goes like separation from some sort of group, impartation or imparting of some sort of knowledge, and then a reintegration back into society with that new knowledge. So within the context of Freemasonry, I think, which falls right in line with that. We know as Masons that the Fellowcraft degree, we learn all sorts of cool stuff. We learn some interesting tools. We're outlines basically for some subjects to even dive into. So the Fellowcraft degree is this liminal degree where we need to start learning some things and maybe start separating some things out of our life that maybe aren't as of use to us anymore. And there's this essential pull for balance, and we could get into that. I'm going to kind of scoot past that for now, because that's a huge theme, especially Kabbalistically, dealing with those pillars and stuff, especially in the second degree, that theme of balance. But moving on, preparation for release back into the world, kind of born again, right? So the second degree, these realization of the self, the tria prima being aspects of the self, are something we need to start working on with some of the things that we're imparted in terms of knowledge during our Masonic experience, right? So I put the tria prima are those elements to balance, right? Or aspects of the self. And then things like allegory, symbolism, meditation, spelled education wrong. Education, the trivium, quadrivium, virtue, those are tools to start working on that sort of thing. So this is just kind of a quote I came up with. I did this in my last presentation. This is just something I like to do to kind of wrap things up. The wages of a fellow craft Mason represent the gift of self-actualization, which is the necessary step in regaining our orientation on the primal path to the celestial lodge on high. So that's kind of how I would summarize that entire alchemical tria prima that I believe is represented in the craft as corn, wine, and oil. So again, two parts, right? We've got this gift, this downpouring from source, and then we've got us represented also by this tria prima, this corn, wine, and oil. And we've got, at least within Freemasonry and a lot of other cultures and organizations, an outline potentially to start working our way back up the tree, that serpent's path. So that's kind of it, guys. I hoped we would be able to talk a lot about this. I didn't want to talk just myself the whole time. Here's my little works cited page where I found some of this stuff. Cool. That third one down is that really cool page that's got some really great Paracelsian alchemical kind of starter stuff. So if anyone's interested in alchemy, but all these things here that I referenced were great. I've got those Bible quotes from this page down, the fourth link down there, and I can send this to anyone if anyone's interested in having it, but I'll stop sharing my screen unless anybody wants me to go back to a screen, but I guess we can do that later. But that's it, brethren. Thanks for letting me hash out my weird thoughts with you.
That was fantastic, Brother Jacob. Thank you so much. Boy, I wrote down so many things we could talk about right now. It's interesting, kind of like the Rishis, these guys, the Kabbalists, they went out into the desert, and I think they really got in touch with what was going on inside of themselves. And so they're having to explain an internal experience existentially. And I think when they came back together, they kind of had the same notes, and I think they might have had that same tree. It's interesting how that shape is kind of integrated in us, because you see it throughout time. whether it be chakras, going through the chakras.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way that you described it. One thing I notice online is so many people have questions about the Kabbalistic tree of life and how confusing it is. How do you use it? How do you know where you're at on it? Are you up? Are you going down? Are you receiving? Are you giving? You know, it's this, like you said, it's I don't even call it a zip file. It's like infinite. It's like a Mandelbrot set, right?
Yeah, and every generation adds to it. You know, it's the coolest thing to me is that it's constantly evolving, and it's all, to me, it's all legitimate. You know, it's all really interesting stuff. The coolest thing about that to me is like how everyone over time has added some very interesting elements to that corpus, I guess.
Yeah, one of the things it's taught me predominantly, and I learned this in Freemasonry, was how to, you can't explain it to somebody. You have to experience it. How to see the two pillars, how to see the two extremes and walk down the middle of them.
Mm-hmm.
Just in your own life, you know, not just to be on one side of something. You know, the lesson with King Solomon and the baby, and that's a tool that's helped me greatly the past 2 years to sit back and look at things now instead of just being attached to one of the polarities, you know, and then being angry either way.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to step back now and see the two polarities there. So I love that on the tree and how you can kind of work your way up. How are you using it in your life as far as mapping out your month, your day, where you are mindfully?
Yeah. Well, I wish I was that. I wish I was that good at integrating it, you know, consciously, daily in some sort of meditation. And that I'd be lying if I told you, you know, I was, you know, that disciplined with it. But no, just what you said is how I, you know, and it's happened quite naturally. I call it like a loss of charge, because we have this tendency to feel very charged about certain things, and a lot of times without like much reason, at least to ourselves. Like, you know, we develop these shells that either our school or our religion or our parents or our friends have kind of built up for us, around us, that kind of change the way we think or mold the way we think, I guess. This is a better way to put it. And you'll find yourself, you know, pissed about something or sad about something, and then you just realize you don't really have good reason, you know. So I think the tree has worked its magic in that way, and that silly stuff, even like on my commutes. I drive a lot for work. I don't get pissed behind the wheel anymore. Like, things are kind of comical to me now. So that sort of thing. It's just kind of permeated my mundane life in a way that I would have never thought, in terms of kind of losing the charge.
Yeah.
And a few of the people I work with who are probably watching this right now are probably like, you know, I don't know, Jake, but you know, we all have our moments, right?
The car is the great test, you know, it truly is. You know, and we're signed up for it. You know, it's like we're given an okay, a pass to yell, and, you know, it's like, okay, you're already prepared for it. But these tools, you learn to separate from it. It's cool. Now you're seeing two sides. You get cut off and you're like, I'm not going to let it make me mad and take my energy from me today. I've done that to people. I'm just going to let it, you know, go, instead of, and then your day just goes to,
it like ruins your whole day for no reason.
Because you did it.
Right.
Yeah. But it's just being aware, you know, just being aware, I think is so awesome. Gosh, what else was I going to throw in here? You know, when you're showing like the Sephiroths, one thing that was explained to me, and I'll give an example of my life of how I've used it just the past like month, consciously.
Yeah.
Kind of like chakras, they're kind of like these circles that are clogged. And as you go through them and you study them, just study one of them. Intellectually, you can kind of unclog these things inside of you. And once you learn these bottom ones, then these top ones you become more aware and more aware. So talking about that energy, I had to close my office, right? So I went down to Malkuth. Oh no. And, my son says, well, what do you love to do? Well, I like, the mysteries and I like skateboarding. Everybody knows I love those two things. He's like, okay, put them together. So I just start focusing on those things, and I just zipped all the way up. And within about 72 hours, we had a shop up, we had designs, and that energy is just flying. I'm doing like 3, 4, 5 designs a day. So in that mode right now, it's really nice. But it'll come down as well. But I think we need people, teachers who can help us know where we're at on this thing, to be able to have a conversation with somebody and say, okay, you're here that way. Okay, cool. Now I can start kind of working. I don't know. What do you think of something like that?
Well, I think that's what mystery schools fulfill that role, right? Initiators and initiatic organizations fulfill that role of this is a sovereign journey.
Yes.
Ultimately, all of this stuff is a sovereign journey. No one's going to hold your hand or can hold your hand through all of this stuff, because it's an internal process. All of this stuff is. But we have our brethren, we have our fraters and our sorors and all of this stuff, all those people and our organizations respectively that kind of place us within our I guess rung in that not necessarily title wise, right? Because we shouldn't do this for titles or names or degrees, but they give us perspective, right? It's like the whole idea of being able to read a book because it has 2 colors on the page. It's we need another perspective to give us perspective, right?
Yes.
Our friends and whatnot will tell us, that we do something that we never realize we actually do, or tell us we have some element of our personality that we go, no, I don't do that, this or that, but we totally do. Our friends, and our family see it way better to us. And
like
I think
20 times a day.
all the time. And that's the role that a mystery school or a fraternity or, all that sort of thing, an esoteric fraternity, they kind of fulfill that role in a spiritual way, right? So that's, I guess, the best way for me to frame that.
That was fantastic. People got to go back and hit the 10-second thing back like 30 times and listen to that again. That was summed up so well. I highly recommend anybody out there, if you're interested in this stuff, if you're interested in the mysteries, people ask me, where do I start? Start at a Blue Lodge. Go to your local Masonic Lodge and show up for dinner. Find out what time their dinners are and go there for 6 months. Get to know the brothers. Next thing you know, you'll be going through your degrees and we'll be experiencing these things that we're talking about today. What do you think about that? I had a conversation with a couple of brothers that are in different societies as well. And we all kind of came to a conclusion of, we're talking about the Blue Lodge, like, should it be more esoteric? And we kind of boiled it down to, it's perfect. It ebbs and flows. It's your entrance. It's a wonderful entrance into the mysteries. What do you think of that, Jacob?
Yeah, I mean, it is what we're making it, right? Freemasonry is a structure. We are the ones giving it life. We're the ones breathing life into it, right? So, by that being the case, it's us who are emerging different elements, whether esoteric or pseudo spiritual, or whether it's just a dinner club or this or that. So it's up to us, and it's up to the individual, that the seeker, to do their due diligence to find a lodge or a society that they think kind of fits their vibe, I guess, in a way. I don't know why I have such a weird like, I cringe sometimes when I say the word vibe because it gets overused. But sometimes it's just the best word. Yeah. Sometimes it's the best word. But
that's the one I do 20 times a day.
Yeah. Oh well, that's good. I'll just concede it's a good word sometimes. But yeah, we are the framers of not only of these organizations, but we're also the ones that are impregnating it with the culture. So to any of the seekers, and if you're a female, there's stuff out there for you as well. So It's not
Absolutely.
like if you're not able to get in necessarily into a Blue Lodge, there's stuff out there, and especially in Arizona, there's a
Yeah.
really cool esoteric sort of renaissance that has happened in the past few years, I believe, in Phoenix.
Huge.
And it's been pretty cool to
has.
go, like, experience. Yeah.
Well, it's been
There's
fun watching.
all
It's
sorts
you
of
guys
stuff.
doing it. It's you guys doing it, man. It's amazing. There's a group of you guys, and every time I meet up with one of you guys, I'm just so blown away and just happy.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool.
Well, thank you, brother.
Let's open it up. If we've got anybody online that wants to ask Brother Jacob any questions tonight about the presentation, any ideas you want to share with us, please jump in.
No, I'm nervous.
Everybody's being shy tonight.
Jason, I saw you raise your hand.
There he is.
Yeah, I won't be shy. Hey, you doing good, Jake?
I'm doing great, brother.
Great.
I wish I had a cigar like you, bro.
Well, next time around, ask me for one. Hey, I enjoyed your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, bro.
Hey, do you have any way to go back to one of your slides?
Yeah. Which one?
The man that was superimposed over the Tree of Life.
Yeah, we can do that. This one here?
Yes. Now, we know that, since there's just a couple of us here, well, we know that there is a hidden Sephiroth there above. It just struck me looking at this. Is there one below or at the knees? Above Malkuth,
okay.
Between Malkuth and, what is it, Yesod?
Yesod is in a weird place in this glyph here. So
I noticed a smaller distance on the last one. Yeah.
Here, let me see. Well, I'll get it in a minute, but no, I'll get it right now since I'm sharing screen. Let me come back. Let me come back to my screen here because I've got a more.
It seems like there's too much air there, and knees are important in your life.
They are.
Yeah.
If you don't have knees, you're gonna have a rough time.
You're kneecapped.
Check this out. This is a more kind of common.
Oh, nice.
Balanced tree.
So it's just extended down. So it isn't at your groin.
So you're only right. So that one's kind of compressed. It's kind of a different glyph. That last one on the slides. But this is where Doph would be, or Doph, the hidden Sephiroth. Right. But this one's more balanced.
I see. Like two.
And this would be the more standardized version here.
5 up the middle and 6 on the side. Anyway, I just saw it seemed like there was too much air there. So I wondered if there was something else hidden that I didn't know.
The tree has evolved a lot, since it's I think Kircher was the first. I mean, this, over the hundreds of years, it's arguably the menorah was the first version of it. Obviously that this is certainly a step from a menorah, but there's several versions, there's several kind of layouts, but I would say that this, at least today's day and age, is kind of the most generally accepted, and that one's more balanced.
You had another slide later that did have it compressed, and that's what made me think, well, maybe it's just the.
Yeah, and you can see, I guess, as well on this. I'll share screen again real quick. These two here.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. It looked compressed. Yeah.
These are a little more balanced as well. They don't have that big gap.
Right.
Just the gap where, and you can see Doph here.
To the best of your knowledge, there is no Sephiroth in that location.
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think anyone's ever put one down here.
Just that's my question.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Who else got a question? I think there was one in the chat here. Fritz.
Say Kirk McNulty.
Suggest you might read. Kirk McNulty is. Which one is that, brother? That's Is that a Hermetic Masonry?
Nope. Contemplating Craft Freemasonry. He's got 3 or 4 different books. He just passed away about 3 weeks ago, but you started off the entire conversation with two things that he talks about in this Contemplating Craft Freemasonry. And he does it by working through each different degree. So the book's really easy to read. He's got it set up as like lessons. So
contemplating the craft, or just contemplating craft?
Well, there's Contemplating Craft Freemasonry, and then there's a supplement to it, and then he has another one that's slightly off subject.
Got it.
And then if you search for him, Kirk McNulty, Kabbalah, I think, in YouTube, there's a really good video that comes up that they filmed of him talking and describing it.
Oh, yeah, here. I'm going to copy this link and put it in the...
Cool.
He's somewhat credited with reestablishing the, I hate to use the word esoteric, but bringing the esoteric back into lodges.
Ooh. Interesting. Do we have any Facebook questions or anything offline?
We've got one from Stephen O'Donnell, and he says, I've always made the corn a symbolic connection to Ceres in relation to a feminine quality. Does Ceres have any aspects or qualities in connection to salt?
I have no idea. I don't even want to speak to that. I don't. Ceres, I would assume, the star. Is it a single star series, or is that a star system? I can't even remember whether it's a single star or a star system. I don't know. I know a little bit about the mythologization, if that's a word, of like Dionysus and Bacchus and their associations with astrological stuff and like wine and maize and grain and that sort of thing. I never heard of Ceres though being.
So Ceres is the largest object in the main asteroid belt that lies between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter with a diameter of 940 km. Interesting. Yeah, we'll have to. Oh, the goddess Ceres is what he's saying. Okay.
Yeah, still don't know. Sorry, brother.
Yeah, I don't either. That would
something
probably
else,
be a good one for Jamie
to look into.
Yeah, we're gonna have Jamie on with all you guys in a few weeks Saturday. So that's something we can ask Jamie. I'm sure he'll have something on that.
And he's the oracle. We'll consult the oracle.
That quote by Casey, man, that is such a good quote. Again, he's summing up that freedom that we're born with on the inside that I think we have to rediscover, right? That on the inside you are free. Once you work these steps and you detach, right, from the material things and move towards God. I've never seen that quote, and that is a really super good quote. That was Casey, right? Paul Case. Okay. Case. Okay.
Yeah. That's Paul Case in. It's in my. Let me pull it up. The specific book is Esoteric Keys of Alchemy.
Okay, that's a great title.
Yeah. Oh, great. But I mean, Paul Foster Case put out so much incredible material. That's a great starting point for anyone interested in the mysteries. He's got a lot. He really brings a lot of these crazy ideas down to earth. He just seemed to maintain a level head, as where a lot of occultists kind of got crazy with some of the stuff. He really kept it level. And I put my email and my website in the chat here if anyone wants to reach out, and I can refer anything. So if anyone, that's Tria Prima, that's my web. That's I have a publishing site with Jamie and brother Pat Shanahan, and we link tons of books in there. So there's tons of good material on that site that you can go straight like to Amazon and buy.
Yeah, and I highly recommend that, guys. You guys are always updating that. Don't you guys do a show like Saturday mornings or something like that as well?
Okay, so I'll do a quick for the people that, because I get asked about it quite a bit.
Okay.
Tria Prima went through a bit of a lull. We haven't posted a podcast in a long time. We just recorded our first one Tuesday night, just this week, and we should have it up any day here. The first one in a while. It's a great one. So we're coming back. Our podcast is coming back. It's usually like a bi-weekly thing, just whenever we feel like it. It's less kind of structured. And it's very conversational. So it's the hope is that you really feel like a fly on the wall. But we have some other really cool projects in the works. Some actual books potentially, and some really cool stuff. So keep an eye out on Tria Prima too.
Yeah, I've heard of some really good stuff. I was listening to one of the podcasts you guys did, and I almost fell over in my seat because I think you and Jamie had a disagreement, and you said the word disagreement, and whoever was doing the production added like a delay effect to it. So it's like disagreement.
Yeah.
It was so brilliant because as the listener, you're like holding on. Yeah. That was so, whoever did that, that was so good. That was so funny. Yeah, I highly recommend that show for everybody. We got about 5 more minutes to go. If anybody else has any questions, let me look online here.
Sorry, Fritz, I missed the A.
And well, thanks for sharing corn, wine, and oil. We know so much more about it now. It's interesting how the stages kind of divide everything up into 3, and then how we just recode them through different cultures and stuff like that. And it's interesting how the men of the 17th and the 16th century chose those 3 things to provide us some deep coda on what's going on internally, you know. Wine to help us get through the brutal day. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean,
right?
It's true. And listen, if you don't think alchemy is in Freemasonry, you haven't been through a chamber of reflection, and you should get your lodge to put a chamber of reflection or integrate one.
I mean, the lodge,
it's there.
Is the entire Blue Lodge is an alchemical lab for the soul. Everything in there is a device to coagulate, to do all the processes, right? It's a lab in itself. You know, it was built by doctors and chemists back in the day. You know, they were very aware of this, and they learned by working with chemicals and changing metals and stuff like that. I think the biggest thing they learned was patience. You know, just being patient with your work, brothers. If it's a business, if it's something you're going through, use time. You can't rush anything. You try to do something too fast, you'll break it. That's one of the major lessons I learned in alchemy. Was I like to do things now, and I like to just get it done and move on to the next thing. And that's why a lot of things don't work out. You know, you go too fast. So when you go through your degrees, I would say the same thing, like chemistry. Exactly. and you being, you know, this stuff that's going to be transmuted, you know, it's going to be taken apart, you know, it's going to be like you come in as a son and you're hit and broken up, but then all these pieces come alive because of your brothers. It's a beautiful thing. Jacob, I'll say a few more things, and then we always ask for a quote at the end of the show, as you know, and we'll get that. But I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Love having you on. Gave me so much to think about, and just back to the roots again. You know, next time I see a degree, this episode is definitely going to come up and give me more awareness of what's being discussed and what's going on in those degrees. We want to thank everybody on Zoom tonight. Thank you for joining us on Facebook Live as well. We'll have this show uploaded in a few days. We'll have it up on YouTube. We'll have the audio up on Spotify. Look for us Saturday, December 19th, 10 a.m. We're going to have Jamie Paul Lamb on with a lot of our previous guests from season 1. And I'm going to throw a question out. I'm not sure what yet. Maybe what got you interested in the mysteries? What do you think of that, Jacob? That might be a good question for everybody to kind of go around. And I would love to hear that. I'd love to hear that. Season 2 starts January 15th with Brother Joe Martinez. We've got some new guests for Season 2. Everybody's going to be excited about. So I just want to thank you again, Brother Jacob. I'm going to leave it to you to provide us our quote. Best wishes, everybody. And then I'll end the broadcast. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Again, thank you, Brother Jacob.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you having me on. Thanks for all the people that popped in here. I totally didn't think of a quote, so I just looked one up, and I'm going to read it, and that's my quote, okay? I did Paul Foster Case again, because I just talked him up. All right. Here we go. It's kind of a long one, not super long. Quote, "It becomes evident that when the life power awakens its mysterious activity at the beginning of a cycle of manifestation, those vibrations which we recognize as sound come into existence before the more rapid pulsations of electricity and light. Thus, modern science confirms the ancient occult teaching that sound is the root of physical existence." There we go. That's not really relevant to my thing, but Paul Foster Case, you guys.
Word, pun intended.
Word.